Have you ever sat beside a close friend, someone who once shared every joy and sorrow with you, yet felt a quiet distance running between you? They still smile, still nod, still offer the same familiar words of concern, but somewhere beneath it, you sense a cold current, as if the mirror between you has cracked and neither of you dares to name it. Carl Jung once said that darkness does not only exist in strangers, but also in those closest to us. And sometimes it is precisely those we hold dear who carry within them a hidden contempt they will never admit to your face. That strange feeling is not your imagination. It often reveals itself in the smallest details. An eye contact held too long, a compliment that feels heavy, a gesture of care that somehow makes you feel controlled. Jung called these fragments of the unconscious mirror moments when the truth leaks through, no matter how much someone tries to conceal it. And once you begin to notice, the inevitable question rises: how can you be sure the person you trust is not quietly turning against you? In this video, we will use the lens of psychology and philosophy to uncover 8 hidden signs, subtle signals that suggest someone close to you may secretly resent you. This is not just a story about betrayal, but a warning. Not every smile carries goodwill, and not every embrace offers safety. More importantly, you will see how this awareness can become a form of motivation, not to distrust everyone, but to protect yourself and hold firm to your inner worth. When relationships you thought were unshakable begin to fracture, there is a hard truth that most people struggle to accept. Sometimes, the very person who makes you feel safest is the one quietly harboring resentment toward you. They don't shout in your face that they hate you. They don't walk away immediately. Instead, they let that hidden hostility flow beneath the surface like a fracture in a mirror. On the outside, everything appears intact. Friendship, family ties, even love. But if you look closely enough, if you dare to confront it, you begin to notice the reflection twisting, revealing subtle distortions you once ignored. Carl Jung often reminded us that within every person's shadow live suppressed parts: envy, anger, bitterness. And sometimes those parts get projected onto the ones closest to them. This is a projection. You become the mirror that absorbs their discomfort, even if you've done nothing wrong. That's why you start to feel the contradiction. How can someone care for you, yet simultaneously make you feel small? How can they stand beside you, yet leave you feeling isolated? The problem is that these signs are rarely obvious. People don't usually confess, "I hate you." Instead, they reveal it through tiny signals. A sharp-edged joke, a silence that cuts colder than words, or an act of help laced with control. It's like looking into a mirror. You recognize the familiar face, yet a strange crack distorts the reflection. And if you're not paying attention, that crack will spread until the relationship collapses beyond repair. This is why this video matters. Not only will you learn to recognize the 8 hidden signs, the 8 fractures on the mirror, but you'll also understand that someone secretly hating you has nothing to do with your worth. It speaks volumes about the darkness they haven't confronted. This awareness isn't meant to make you paranoid. It's meant to make you awake. Because once you learn how to read the mirror, you'll see who truly stands beside you, and who only smiles to disguise the shadows inside them. The truth is, no one wants to believe that someone close could despise them. We prefer to think of friends as anchors, of family as safe arms. But Jung warned us, the shadow doesn't care about distance. It only needs a place to live. And sometimes, it takes shelter in the eyes of the person who sits right next to you. That's why the first step is acceptance. When you accept the possibility, you can begin to observe. And when you observe, you will start to see the fractures you once pretended weren't there. In the next sections, we will dive into each of these signs, each crack on that invisible mirror, so that you no longer have to wonder, am I imagining this, or do they hate me? You will have an answer, and that answer, though difficult to swallow, will set you free. The first sign that someone close to you secretly resents you lies in the subtle distortion of their gaze. The mirror reflecting you is no longer clear but covered in a thin layer of dust. They may still smile, still nod, still listen, but you feel that their eyes don't truly reach you. Carl Jung once said, "The shadow never disappears, it only changes its form." And in that look, you can glimpse the shadow, a trace of contempt, a flicker of mockery, or a coldness they couldn't hide in time. You notice it in the smallest moments. When you share a success, instead of genuine joy, they release a lukewarm compliment, as if trying to dim your light. When you open up about your sadness, instead of empathy, they change the subject or suddenly become busy. Outwardly, nothing seems obvious, but in the mirror, your reflection appears blurred, no longer honored with the respect it once held. This is the first crack. They no longer want to see you in your wholeness. The danger is that most people dismiss this sign. You want to believe you're mistaken. You don't want to believe that someone you love could secretly hate you. But your inner mirror, your soul, always knows. It sends signals through that vague discomfort. Why do I feel smaller under that gaze? Why do I always feel judged, even when no words are spoken? Jung called this the intuition of the unconscious, the mind-reading signals that reason tries to ignore. If you've ever left a conversation with someone close and felt as though you had been quietly diminished, that is the mirror telling you the truth. They may never scream at you, but their shadow has already begun to use you as a screen to project what they cannot admit: envy, dissatisfaction, resentment. This is where you need clarity. The first sign is always a small distortion in the reflection, and if you ignore it, the crack widens into deeper forms of damage, subtle control, betrayal through words spoken behind your back, and eventually a distance that can never be bridged. So trust that feeling. When the mirror that reflects you begins to blur, do not rush to blame yourself. Remember, it isn't your fault. It is only their shadow searching for a place to project itself. And your task is not to pretend you don't see it, but to look straight into the mirror. The second sign. When the mirror is no longer honest, it begins to distort. You tell a simple story, and immediately they twist it with sarcasm or mockery. What you say slowly gets bent out of shape, as if, in their eyes, you are only a caricature in your own life. Jung once warned that when someone refuses to face their own shadow, they project it onto others. In this case, you become the mirror used to reflect the contempt they cannot admit toward themselves. And so they use sharp jokes, innocent remarks, or cutting humor that quietly reduces you. The third sign. They start to control you, but disguise it as care. They tell you what to wear, who to spend time with, which choices to make, all framed as concern for your well-being. But if you look closely, the mirror shows you a different truth. It is not care, but a desire to confine you within the frame they've built. This counterfeit form of care often leaves you feeling indebted, as if you must comply in order to keep the peace. Yet deep down, you know your freedom is being slowly eroded. The fourth sign. The mirror begins to crack again, through whispers behind your back. You overhear from someone else that they've spoken about you with bitterness. You notice that private details you once shared in trust have turned into stories tossed around at drinking tables or casual gossip in dim corners. This is not just betrayal, but the shadow inside them, trying to pull you down so they can feel taller. Jung called this the mechanism of devaluation. When someone cannot bear your light, they try to shatter it into fragments, making it easier for their fragile ego to swallow. If you look across these three signs, you'll see the same pattern. A mirror that once was clear, now covered in dust, fractured and warped. It no longer reflects you faithfully, but instead turns you into a distorted version, one they can accept more easily. But remember, the distortion does not come from you. It comes from them, their unhealed wounds, their shadow they refuse to confront. The hardest part is that you may still want to believe the excuses. They were just joking. They care about me. Maybe I'm just too sensitive. But the mirror never lies. That feeling of being diminished, of being controlled, of being betrayed. These are truths your intuition is already reading. And if you continue to dismiss them, the signs will only grow sharper, until the bond that once held you together wears down beyond repair. The fifth sign. The mirror doesn't just crack. It starts reflecting things that were never yours. This is when they consistently accuse you, blaming you for the very things they are doing. They say you're selfish, while in reality, they are the ones thinking only of themselves. They claim you're distant, when in truth, they've built the invisible wall. Jung called this projection, the unacknowledged shadow inside them hurled onto you as a way to unload the burden. If you pay attention, you'll notice that suddenly you're carrying accusations that don't belong to you, as if you've been forced into playing the villain in a script they wrote. The sixth sign. Silent withdrawal. A mirror clouded with dust no longer reflects clearly, and relationships follow the same law. They start avoiding your eyes, dodging any real conversations. When you need them most, silence stretches out like a cold curtain. No more small exchanges, no more warm presence. Only empty spaces that leave you wondering, did I do something wrong? But the answer is not in you. The silence is not about your mistake. It's about their choice to pull their affection away long before. The seventh sign. Care that turns into a tightening collar. They ask where you are, who you're with, what you're doing. At first it feels like concern, but over time you realize it's control. The mirror that once reflected now becomes a locked door, forcing you to move in rhythms they dictate. Jung warned that hidden power in relationships rarely shows as overt dominance, but rather as control disguised as love. And when this unfolds, you slowly lose your sense of freedom, and piece by piece, you lose yourself. The eighth sign. At last, the mirror shatters entirely, through backstabbing words, criticisms when you're not there. You hear from others that they've belittled you, retold your mistakes with a mocking tone. What was once shared in trust has now been turned into shards, sharpened into weapons against you. This is the clearest fracture. No longer sarcasm to your face, no longer silence in avoidance, but direct betrayal. When the mirror has cracked this far, you need to be fully awake, because every word they spread behind your back doesn't just wound you, it reshapes your image in the eyes of others, twisting it into something false. These four signs connect like fractures along the same mirror, from being accused of things that were never yours, to silent distance, to disguised control, and finally betrayal by words. Each crack makes the mirror less able to show the truth. But Jung reminds us, the essence of a mirror never changes, it only reflects. If you see yourself warped in it, understand that the distortion isn't you. It's the dust and fractures of the one standing across from you. At this stage, the signs are too obvious. No longer vague suspicion, no longer the thought that maybe I'm just too sensitive. When you are constantly made to feel smaller, controlled, and betrayed, that is the moment the mirror has lost its true function. And the question that stands before you is brutal in its simplicity. Will you keep standing in front of a broken mirror, watching yourself distorted? Or will you turn away to seek a clearer reflection? When the mirror has cracked, the greatest danger isn't the distorted image inside. It's that you start believing the distortion is the truth. You begin to believe you are small, flawed, deserving of control. And that is precisely the illusion the other person's shadow wants to impose on you. Jung once said, "We are not wounded by truth, but by the illusions we mistake for truth." The first step to breaking this cycle is learning to see through the dust and fractures. Pay close attention to the sensations in your body. Each time they mock you, you feel your chest tighten. Each time they go silent, you sense an icy hollow in your chest. Each time they try to control you, your breath shortens. This is intuition, the language of the mirror within you. It shows you that the reflection is not accurate. And the moment you dare to trust your feelings, you've already begun stepping out of the illusion. The next step is to separate who you are from how they see you. Many people blur the two, and in doing so, lose their sense of self. But remember, a mirror does not create the image. It only reflects. If the reflection is warped, it isn't you that has changed. It's the mirror that has broken. When you truly understand this, a sense of lightness emerges. Your worth has not diminished just because someone else can no longer see it. One practical way is to observe how others respond to you. If a few other close ones still see you as trustworthy, if other relationships still reflect warmth back to you, then that proves your image is intact. Only one mirror has cracked, and you are under no obligation to keep staring into it. Finally, stop justifying what is already clear. Phrases like, "They were just joking," or "Maybe I'm too sensitive," are how you brush more dust across the glass, hiding the truth further. Courage is not measured by how much more pain you can endure. It is measured by how early you trust your intuition at the very first fracture. Because the longer you stare into a broken mirror, the further you drift from your true reflection. There is a brutal truth few want to admit. The deepest wounds don't always come from distance or strangers. Sometimes, the person you trusted most is the very one who plants darkness into the mirror that reflects your life. Jung called this the reflection of the shadow, when the repressed darkness inside someone seeks to spill over onto you. And the paradox is, the closer they are to you, the easier it is for them to project that shadow. Think back to the moments when warmth quietly turned into thorns. A mocking remark about your success. A cold glance when you joyfully shared something. A rumor spread by the very friend you once confided in. These are not accidents. They are the mechanics of psychology. When someone secretly hates you, they cannot bear the light you radiate, because that light exposes their lack, their insecurity, their buried inferiority. And instead of facing themselves, they choose to dim you. The mirror at this point becomes a battlefield. You stand before it, hoping to see a clear image of who you are, while they smear dust and carve fractures to force you to see a distorted version of yourself. They control you under the guise of care, advising you as if concerned, but in reality, pulling you back into the mold that makes them feel safe. They whisper to others, planting half-truths and half-lies, eroding your worth in the eyes of those around you. This is not mere dislike. It is a form of psychological violence disguised with intimacy. Jung once warned, "What imprisons us is not visible chains, but the chains in the mind set by others. And those chains often come from the closest ones, for they know exactly where your soft spots lie. A critique from a stranger may fade in hours, but from someone close, it carves deep into the mirror of your soul. The climax of this tragedy is when you begin to believe their shadow. You doubt yourself. You abandon dreams because you think you are too unrealistic. You silence yourself in conversations because you fear you will make others uncomfortable. This is the moment you no longer need them to hate you. You've begun to hate yourself on their behalf. That is the most silent destruction. And so you must ask, why does someone close nurture such hidden hostility? Jung offered a cold answer. When they see you, they see everything they are not. Courage where they are cowardly. Light where they are dim. Freedom where they are shackled. And what humans despise most is not the distant enemy. It is the mirror that reveals the parts they refuse to look at. This is the breaking point of the story. You realize it is not the hatred of strangers that is most dangerous, but the shadow projected by those closest to you. If you do not learn to recognize it and step away, that mirror will remain warped, and you will eventually lose the true image of yourself. After recognizing the shadow in the mirror, the next step is not to shatter it in haste, but to learn which mirrors are worthy of reflection. This means resetting your boundaries, beginning with listening to yourself. Ask, when I am with them, do I expand or do I shrink? If the answer keeps returning as shrinking, that is the sign it is time to create distance. A simple practice is to try a short disconnection. Reduce the hours of exposure, limit how much of your private world you share, and observe how your mood shifts. You will be surprised to find clarity, energy, and even joy returning, simply because the warped mirror is no longer casting its shadow on you. Then seek out the clear mirrors, those rare people with whom you can say what you truly think without ridicule, with whom you can share a success without fear of mockery. They are the ones who reflect your real image with honesty, helping you see yourself without distortion. Jung once said, "Freedom begins when you dare to stand alone." But freedom is also nourished when you dare to choose relationships that feed your light rather than your shadow. And most importantly, practice saying one word that is often forgotten. No. No to control. No to sarcasm. No to rumors. Each time you say no, it is as if you wipe one more stain off the mirror of your soul. If you choose to ignore the cracks in the mirror, the price you pay will not strike all at once, but will quietly gnaw at you day after day. At first, you will find yourself growing suspicious of your worth. Each time you step into the room of a distorted relationship, the reflection that comes back is always a smaller you, a weaker you, a less valuable you. And eventually, you start believing that it is the truth. Slowly, you no longer recognize which voice is your own and which is an echo forced upon you. When control disguises itself as care, you will feel as though you are living inside a golden cage, safe on the outside, but inside, your freedom is chipped away piece by piece. When rumors and mockery keep flowing into your ears, you begin to carry the image of the guilty one even when you have done nothing wrong. That warped reflection slowly hardens into a mask you are forced to wear. And with each passing day, you drift further from the face that was once authentically yours. Carl Jung warned that what we refuse to confront in the unconscious will return to us as fate. If you do not dare to face the reality that even those closest to you may carry a hidden hostility, you will remain stuck in the same cycle, choosing the wrong people, giving trust to the wrong hands, and letting their shadows shape the outline of your life. Remember, Continuing to stare into a shattered mirror does not only cut you with its shards, it makes you lose the path back home. Many never step out because they grow accustomed to living with that distorted image, until they forget they ever had a clear and luminous face of their own. This warning is not here to plant fear, but to reveal the urgency. If you do not act, you risk losing the very core of yourself, the essence Jung called the self. And once that core has been buried for too long, finding it again will be far more painful, perhaps never fully complete. In the end, you must understand this. The signs you've noticed are not accusations, but whispers reminding you to listen to yourself. Someone may smile at you today, yet still carry within them a fracture they will never speak aloud. Jung once said, "The shadows of others only become truly dangerous when you ignore them, when you let them blend silently into your life without realizing." Picture yourself holding a compass. If its needle has been secretly turned by someone else, you may keep walking, keep believing you are headed in the right direction, until one day you realize you've wandered into an entirely foreign land. The signs you've just learned about are ways of checking that compass again, to know whether your path is still true, or whether it has already been bent by an unseen hand. Do not fear the truth when it appears. The truth never destroys you. It only destroys the illusions that once kept you captive. And in the moment you accept to see it clearly, you will realize you were never truly alone. You were only beginning to rediscover the path that no one else but you was ever meant to walk. Perhaps, in the next video, another layer of this truth will come to meet you. But for now, hold on to this single question. Whose direction is the compass in your hand pointing to?